Miss, speak. Do you have a death wish?
The son of my mother's killer is my...
Jesse said it coldly, every word sharp enough to cut through the heavy silence in the penthouse. The top floor overlooked the bright night of Seoul, but neither she nor Dave cared about the view anymore.
Jesse, what are you talking about?
Dave's face was full of shock, confusion mixing with fear, as if he couldn't understand how everything changed so quickly. But to understand why Jesse said those words, we go back to earlier that evening. Jessie was at home, curled on her couch with a book in her hand. She had just closed the last page and stretched her arms when her phone buzzed. A normal sound. But the message was not normal. When she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. Unknown number. You have searched everywhere for your mom's killer, but never beside you. If your mother knew her daughter was in love with the son of the detective who shot her, she would rise from her grave. Jessie's fingers trembled around her phone. Her heart felt like it had stopped. No, she whispered. This has to be a lie. She read it again, and again. Her chest tightened so badly she could barely breathe. Her boyfriend, Dave, his mother, the detective who handled her mother's case. Could it be true? Jessie grabbed her keys with shaky hands. She didn't dress up. She didn't think. She just rushed out and headed straight for Dave's penthouse, the top floor he often invited her to. Tonight, she wasn't going to visit him as his girlfriend. Tonight, she came for the truth. Dave stood in front of her now, confused and helpless. Jessie, what are you talking about? He asked again, his voice cracking. She stepped closer, anger burning through every word.
Dave, your mother was the detective on my mom's case, right?
Yes.
And you found out 3 months ago and still kept it from me?
Jesse.
You found out she was accused of shooting my mom and you hid it from me, didn't you? Dave closed his eyes. That was enough answer. Jessie let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head slowly. I don't care what you feel for me, she said, her tone ice cold. The son of my mother's killer is my enemy too. Dave reached out in panic. Jessie, please. She stepped back. Let's pretend we never met. Stranger. The word hit him like a blow to the chest. Dave's hand dropped. His eyes filled with pain, guilt, fear, everything he had been trying to hide. Jessie turned away, staring at the Seoul skyline, refusing to let him see her tears. Leave, she said quietly. He hesitated, then walked toward the elevator. The doors closed. Jessie finally let her tears fall. Jessie got into her car, anger still burning in her chest. She drove until she reached a small bar tucked between two quiet buildings. Inside, the dim lights felt colder than the night outside. She sat at the counter and lifted a finger.
One strong drink.
She drank glass after glass. The liquor was bitter, but her heart was worse. 2 middle-aged Korean men noticed her, a young foreigner, beautiful and alone, drowning in alcohol. They exchanged glances, thinking she would be easy to approach. One of them stepped closer, reaching out like he was doing her a favor. Jessie didn't even look at him. She pushed him back with sharp force. He stumbled and shouted in anger, but when he saw her eyes, dark, fierce, full of pain, he stopped immediately. He didn't dare take another step. Jessie let out a shaky breath. Her vision was starting to blur. She pulled out her phone and called her best friend, Juliana. The call rang once, twice, then cut off. No answer. Jessie stared at the screen for a moment, then let her hand fall to her side. She stood up slowly, holding onto the counter as the room spun around her.
She walked outside.
The cold wind hit her face, but it did nothing to clear her mind. She opened her car door, whispering to herself, I can drive, it's fine. But it wasn't. She started the engine. The world outside the windshield swayed left and right. Streetlights stretched into long streaks. The road no longer felt straight. Then, crash. Her car slammed into a black luxury vehicle. A car far too expensive, far too dangerous to touch. Jessie's hands froze. Her breath stopped. Even in her blurred mind, she knew one thing. Tonight, her troubles had only just begun.
Miss Speak, do you have a death wish?
The voice was cold, without a single drop of warmth. "Why drag others with you?" he said, each word slow and cutting. "If you wish to send yourself to the other world?" Jessie was too dazed to process anything. One moment she had crashed into another car. The next moment, someone stood outside her window, like a shadow given form. She blinked hard, trying to steady her vision. His cold words slipped into the car like ice. "I ask again, miss, do you have a death wish?" Jessie flinched slightly. Her mind struggled to catch up. Her fingers tightened on the steering wheel. Her heart thudded painfully. She could barely see straight. Her ears rang. He took one slow step back, giving her space but not freeing her from his gaze. Or, his eyes narrowed faintly, "Did you think you could hit a random car on the street?" Jessie's heart stopped. Random car?
No.
Nothing about him felt random. "How do you plan to compensate this boss?" His voice rolled out again, cold and far too calm for the situation. Jessie felt bile rise in her throat. Her vision was still blurry, her mind still spinning, but she could hear every word he said clearly, painfully clearly. He crouched slightly, lowering himself to her eye level through the open window. His gaze swept over her car, the dents, the shattered lights, and then returned to her face. "With this cheap little car of yours," he said lightly, almost mocking, "even if you sell it and everything else you own, it won't fix even a quarter of the damage you caused." The words struck her harder than the crash. Jessie's anger sparked through the dizziness. Humiliation stung her chest like fire, burning away the fog. Her hands clenched the steering wheel, and she forced her voice out, rough but steady. "I will pay."
He paused.
For the first time, a small shift appeared in his expression. Interest. A flicker, subtle as the twitch of an eyebrow. Her drunken state, her trembling voice, yet this stubborn courage, it intrigued him. But he didn't show it. His expression remained same. "Oh," he murmured, the hint of a smirk touching his lips. "This boss will remember those words." A full week passed. Jessie heard nothing from the man. Little by little, her shoulders relaxed. The fear that clung to her chest finally loosened. One evening, she sat with friend Juliana in their small apartment, cold drinks between them. Juliana took a long sip, then let out a laugh. "Jessie, honestly, with the way you described him, are you sure he wasn't a dream? A man like that, do you think he's real? Sounds like something out of a drama." She swirled her glass, amusement shining in her eyes. Jessie scoffed, leaning back on the couch. "If my car wasn't still in the mechanic shop, I would have believed the whole night never happened." Juliana raised a brow. "Maybe he doesn't care about the damage. Rich men like that don't waste time on strangers." Jessie nodded slowly. "Exactly. Maybe I overreacted, maybe the alcohol turned some random guy into a monster in my head. And maybe he let it go." But as she spoke, a strange uneasiness brushed her heart, as if somewhere far away, someone had already decided she wouldn't escape so easily. Then her fears happened. Jessie was lying on her bed, scrolling through her phone when a knock sounded at the door. She didn't even look up at first. The neighbor's kid often knocked on the wrong door when playing. But then the doorbell rang again. Jessie sat up slowly, confused. She walked to the door and opened it just a bit. A tall man in a black suit stood outside. Not smiling, not friendly. He looked like the type of person who didn't waste words. "Miss Jessie," he said calmly, as if he already knew her well. Jessie frowned. "Do I know you?" The man bowed slightly. My boss asks to see you. Jesse blinked. For what? For the compensation, he said simply. He wishes to discuss it over a drink. Jesse scoffed. I didn't agree to go anywhere. And how did you find my address? The man straightened, his expression still polite but firm. Miss Jessie, you damaged my boss's car. You can refuse, but you cannot avoid the responsibility. He ignored her second question. Jessie clenched her jaw. The man stepped aside so she could see the black luxury car parked outside her gate, engine running, door already open for her. She felt her annoyance rise. So this was how powerful the man thought he was? Jessie didn't bother changing out of her home clothes, a simple blue top and black joggers. If this boss wanted to see her, he would see her exactly as she was. She grabbed her phone and stepped outside. Fine, she muttered. Let's see who your boss thinks he is. The ride was silent. He only said one thing during the drive. Please fasten your seatbelt, Mississippi. Nothing more. Jessie sat in the back seat, arms folded, staring out the window as Soul rushed by. The driver's focus stayed on the road, posture straight, expression carved from stone. The silence made her stomach twist, but her anger kept her steady. After a while, the car slowed and descended into a private underground parking lot. Soft golden lights glowed above rows of luxury cars, each one more expensive than the last. When the door opened for her, Jessie stepped out. Ahead stood a building with dark glass walls, gold trimming, and a quiet entrance designed for powerful people who didn't like being seen. A restaurant, but not the kind ordinary people visited. The suited man gestured. This way. They walked into a long corridor lit by warm amber lanterns. The silence inside felt heavier than the one in the car. No voices. No footsteps. No restaurant noise. Just the hum of air conditioning and Jessie's heartbeat. The man stopped at a door. He slid it open slowly. Cool air drifted out, carrying the faint scent of aged wine. Please enter, he said. Jessie stepped inside. And there he was, the man from that night. Sitting alone at a round table, his black suit sharp, his posture relaxed yet dangerous. His eyes lifted to hers, the kind of gaze that could crush someone or spare them with a single decision. Jessie froze. The door clicked shut behind her. Jessie had come ready to demand answers, ready to ask why he dragged her here, ready to show she wouldn't be pushed around. But all of that vanished the moment she stepped inside. Her breath caught. The private room looked like something built for kings, warm lights, polished wood, a quiet stillness that made the air feel heavier. And in the center, sitting with effortless authority, was the man from that night. Dark suit, sharp features, eyes colder than winter rain. Jessie froze. He raised his head slowly, gaze sweeping over her without a single hint of warmth. A faint smirk touched the corner of his mouth. Have you suddenly fallen for this boss, miss? His tone was smooth, dangerous. On whose permission did you stare so long? Jessie snapped back to herself immediately. In your dreams, she shot back, lifting her chin. If I stared, it's because I almost threw up looking at you. The room quieted. His smirk faded just slightly. A soft shift in his expression, almost invisible, but there. Something had hit him. He leaned back in his chair, fingers tapping the table once, slow and deliberate, as if testing her courage, as if wondering how far her tongue could go before it got her in trouble. The silence tightened. He crossed one leg over the other, eyes locked on hers. Interesting. Jessie swallowed, but she didn't look away. Whatever this man was, whatever power wrapped around him like a second skin,
She refused to bow.
the private room sank into a cold, heavy silence. Jessie expected him to speak, but he didn't. Instead, the man reached into his suit jacket with calm, precise movements and placed a folded sheet of paper on the table. A soft tap on the polished wood. Jessie hesitated, then picked it up. Her eyes scanned the page. Front damage. Sensor recalibration. Grille replacement. Repaint. Premium towing. Labor. And something called inconvenience tax. The total stared back at her like an insult. Her throat tightened. Am I supposed to buy a new car? She said slowly. Because this amount, he cut in, voice soft but ice cold, is correct. Jesse's jaw dropped. This is insane. He leaned back slightly, studying her as though she were a curious mistake. So, you didn't bother to look up the car you crashed into? His tone was calm, almost bored. Or, did your brain not go that far? Jesse froze. He wasn't finished. If your tongue worked as fast as your brain, he said, you would have checked the car you hit before complaining. Her face burned with humiliation,
Shock. Anger.
embarrassment, all at once. But she bit her tongue. Not because she agreed, but because the number on the paper was enough to silence anyone. He lifted his wine glass, the movement smooth, practiced, elegant. Miss, he said quietly, this is the discounted version. Jessie nearly dropped the bill. Discounted? This? She swallowed, trying to breathe normally. His eyes followed her every reaction, unreadable, as if measuring how easily she would break. Finally, he set the glass down and asked, so, when do you plan to pay this boss? The question cut through the room like a blade. Jessie gripped the paper tighter, knuckles turning white.
She didn't know how to pay.
She didn't even know how to get out of this mess. Jessie lowered her eyes to the bill again, her fingers tightening around the paper. I don't know how to compensate you for this, she admitted quietly. There was no anger in her voice now, just honesty and a sudden, sharp fear. The amount written wasn't something she could pull out of her savings. Not something she could manage. Not something she could laugh over with Juliana. Unless she sold her own car, even then, she still wouldn't reach the number on the page. Her chest tightened. She looked up slowly, searching his face for any hint of mercy. I don't have that kind of money, she said, voice small but steady. But I'll think of something. The man watched her silently, as though measuring the truth behind her words. She lifted her head. I need time. He leaned back slightly, studying her face, not with sympathy, but with the cold patience of someone deciding whether she was worth hearing. You need time, he repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. Then, with no expression at all, he lifted his hand and checked the time on his watch. You have 1 week. Jessie froze. 1 week. His eyes lifted to hers, sharp and unwavering. If you intend to pay, he said, voice low and final, then do it properly. I dislike debts that linger. The words fell between them like a verdict.
A week.
7 days. Too short. But refusing wasn't an option. Not with the way he looked at her. Not with the weight of his presence pressing down like a threat wrapped in silk. Jessie swallowed. All right. Jessie had barely finished saying all right when the man made a small flick of his fingers, almost lazy, almost unnoticeable. But someone moved. A second presence stepped out from the shadowed corner of the room, silent as air. Jessie's heart jumped. She hadn't even realized another person had been there the whole time. The man didn't look at her again. His eyes were already on his wine glass. Lead her out, he said calmly. The hidden bodyguard bowed once, then gestured toward the door with a polite stiffness that didn't match the tension in the room. Jessie stood slowly, her legs weak, but her face set. Without another word, she followed him out. Behind her, the door slid shut, soft, final, and cold. He hadn't planned to bother with her again. A drunk foreign girl crashing into his car? Too small. Too insignificant. Normally, he would let someone like that disappear and never spare a thought. In fact, after that night, he intended to forget her completely. But then he remembered her words. The fierce way she claimed she would pay, even when she could barely sit straight. There had been no fear in her voice. Only stubborn anger. That alone was unusual. And, honestly, he had been bored. So, he decided to watch. To see how far her boldness would go. How her face would change when she finally saw the true bill. But the moment she walked into the private room earlier today, the first thing she said made his eyebrow twitch. Trying to vomit just from looking at him? A nobody like her dared say that to his face. A mere freelancer from a rising private company. Someone so easy to track that his men found her address in minutes. Someone with no background, no protection, no family name. He almost laughed. Did she even know who he was? People like her, they always heard about him. Rumors, whispers. But very few had actually seen him. Yet she dared behave that way. Unreasonable girl. And that was precisely why he decided he would not let this matter die quietly. He wanted to see how she struggled through the week he gave her. How she tried to gather that impossible sum. What she would look like when she realized she couldn't do it. Whether she would break or surprise him again. Someone had managed to get under his skin. And he found himself curious. Dangerously curious.